This presentation is going to help us to learn how to use Carroll diagrams, which we use for sorting information, and today we're going to use it to sort numbers into different groups. This is an example of a blank Carroll diagram. As you can see, it's got 2 columns and 2 rows. We would put the names of the categories at the top of the rows and at the side of the columns, and that would show us how to sort the data into different groups. We use a Carroll diagram if we want to sort information using different categories. For example, if we were sorting numbers, we might want to sort them into odd or even numbers, or if we were sorting shapes, we might want to sort them by the number of sides that they have. This picture shows how a Carroll diagram can be used to sort shapes using different categories. Along the top we can see the categories are has curved lines or has straight lines. And down the side we can see the categories are has more than 3 sides or has 3 sides or fewer than 3 sides. So we're going to be sorting the shapes using those categories. We're going to go through an example together. You'll need a blank piece of paper or a printout of the blank Carroll diagram, and you'll also need a pencil and maybe a rubber. If you're using a blank piece of paper instead of the printout of a Carroll diagram, you'll need to copy this shape here. It's a table with 3 columns and 3 rows. Use a ruler if you have one to make your lines nice and straight. First of all, you'll need to write the categories on your Carroll diagram. So down the side, in the side boxes, you're going to write bigger than 10 in one box and smaller than 10 in the other box. Along the top, you're going to write odd in one box and even in another box. Now it's time to sort our numbers into the different groups using the categories in the columns and the rows. So for example, if we start with number 3 is an odd number and it is smaller than 10. So we would write it in the box where odd and smaller than 10 cross over. We do the same for all the numbers in the list, and then you can check on the next slide whether you've got your answers correct. Here you can see I have sorted all the numbers into the correct groups. So numbers that are bigger than 10 and are odd numbers are 35, 23, 17, 11 and 33. Numbers that are bigger than 10 and are even numbers are 12, 18, 26, 40, 100, 34 and 20. Numbers that are smaller than 10 and are odd numbers, well, there's only one and it's number 3. and numbers that are smaller than 10 and are even numbers, we've got number 4 and number 2. So check your work and make sure you've got all the numbers in the correct groups. The final thing to do with the Carroll diagram is to have a look at how many objects or numbers or shapes you have in each group. So on our Carroll diagram, we had 5 numbers that were bigger than 10 and were odd numbers. We had 7 numbers that were bigger than 10 and were even numbers. We only had 1 number that was smaller than 10 and was an odd number. And we had 2 numbers that were smaller than 10 and were even numbers. So we can see that the biggest group here was the numbers that were bigger than 10 and that were even numbers. And the smallest group was numbers that were smaller than 10 and were odd numbers. Well done! You've learned how to use a Carroll diagram to sort numbers. Now go and try one of the other activities to practice using a Carroll diagram to sort data of different types.